Now that we've learned quite a bit about nodes, I want to point out some of the best practices for using them when it comes to color grading. We know that each node can hold any number of corrections and masks and controls and everything that happens down here in the color palettes. And so we really have a lot of freedom to be able to make 50 different adjustments in the first node and then do 50 more adjustments here. But the best way to actually use nodes to our advantage is to kind of split up some of these tasks in between different nodes. So it might look something like this. In one node, you would adjust your contrast, and then in another node, you might adjust your exposure, and then in another node, you might adjust some other control. And the advantage here is that you can turn one thing on or off, or you can reset it, and you keep the rest of your work. It's kind of splitting things out to keep you organized as well as kind of just save time. So let's say I have a node for contrast, a right click and say contrast. Then I can make another node by either right clicking and saying add node, add serial, or I can hit Alt S on the keyboard. And now I can label this saturation. And this is where I can push up just my saturation. And then maybe I have another node, and this will be a warm push. And I can take my offset and just push this into a little bit warmer. And now I can toggle off and on these different adjustments and see what each one is doing. This is also really great if I have a shot that maybe just needs part of this. Maybe it needs a contrast and saturation, but it doesn't need to be so warm. I can copy this color grade over, and then in my warm push, I can either make it warmer or cooler while keeping the same contrast and saturation. This is a really smart way to work. In fact, a lot of colorists actually use what we call a fixed node tree. And what that means is you kind of build a template out of these nodes. And it's the exact same template for every shot for the most part. So this first node might be something like exposure. And the next node might be saturation. And the node after that might be contrast. And then we might have some more details. Maybe we'll have some parallel nodes, and those all work on different details. The shortcut to add a parallel node is just select whatever node you want to add a parallel node next to and hit Alt-P. And then once we have something like this, I can right-click anywhere in the empty space and say Clean Up Node Graph. And now we have a nice node graph laid out that I can kind of use as a template to keep myself organized. Then if I want to adjust something in the shot like exposure, I go to the exposure node and make whatever exposure adjustments I want. Same for saturation. If I want to adjust the saturation of this shot, I do it on the saturation node. So I always know where that adjustment is, and I can turn it off and on really easily if I want to. All in all, how you use nodes is up to you, and there isn't really a right way or a wrong way. You kind of just have to pick what works for you. I like using a fixed node tree like this. Helps me go quicker and stay more organized. But there's nothing really wrong with doing your color in one or two nodes and doing multiple things in one node. It just kind of depends on what works for you.